How you going, people? Talk about branches of government here. Threw on my old police crap here. Working as an undercover detective, we didn't wear uniforms a lot. So this was what basically I'd pretty much go to work in every day. This shirt would just be thrown in my car. I'd have my web belt on, and if we went out on contacts or whatever, I would throw this shirt on. In California, you have to have more than just a web belt with a badge on it in order to be covered in Code 3 pursuits. So we would throw this vest on and that would cover us, and then we'd throw the hat on if we were out in other areas. Also, it makes it easier for cops if they come up on you, they see some guy with a gun out there. It makes it very easy. I don't want them to shoot me in the back thinking there's some guy with a gun. So obviously these vests would do it. But I was thinking about all this debates and all the different problems with the country right now. And I wanted to just talk about a little bit about what branch of government do I work for? Who do I represent when I do this or when I do this? Who am I representing? What branch of government? Am I representing Congress? Am I representing the Supreme Court? No. I am the executive branch. So all this talk about, if you look at the Constitution about how the balance of power is, how Congress, our legislative branch, Congress, the House and the Senate, the executive branch, the President, and then our judicial branch, which is led by the Supreme Court. When you look at the three branches of government that our country was founded on under the Constitution, there was a balance of power. Each branch can only do so much because they didn't want a tyrannical government, one branch getting too much power, because then they could take over the country. So in order to balance, because they know government grows and government seizes power, and government will seize from the people. Power corrupts absolutely. People in power want more power and will do more to keep power. So they wanted to put checks and balances on all the branches. So everybody's saying Congress, and our system is designed, Congress is supposed to be the most powerful branch. The House and the Senate. The Senate, every state gets 2 representatives. So it's equal. 50 states, we have 100 representatives. The tiebreaker is the Vice President. He's kind of in charge of the Senate. But they're still part of Congress. And then we have the House, which is divided on how many people, which is why the liberals want all these illegals coming into these liberal states, because they get more representation in Congress. That's how they change the laws. Our legislative branch, Congress, the House and the Senate, the House gets more seats for more people. You have some states that only have 1 representative. And then you have California that has 53 representatives. So when people say, equal representation, and that, I think that probably needs to be fixed. I'm not for a lot of constitutional amendments, but there should be an amendment a little bit about the country being more equal and not allowing manipulators of the system to flood their states with illegal refugees, raise their number of counts so they have more authority in the House, which is supposed to be the strongest branch of the government. Now, I don't think Congress is the strongest branch. Why? Because of this. This is why. I work for the executive branch when I was working as a cop. That is the strongest one in government. That is the one that can impede on your life the most. The president is the commander-in-chief of the military, and he's the top law enforcement officer in the land, which means he controls everyone with these. Every military, every law enforcement officer falls under the executive branch, which means the president has a lot of stinking power. Too much power, in my opinion. Different topic. I just kind of want, when I'm thinking about this, I'm hearing about, Congress has the power of the purse, and it was designed. Congress should have the most power because they have the direct representation of the people. They have people from their state and the Senate, and they have people from their state and the House. It's called the People's House because that's where our representatives are. The other checks and balances that are in place are being warped and changed with this political crap. So where the executive branch used to maybe be restrained by Congress And if he got out of hand, then the Supreme Court could rule in the president and say, you know what you're doing is unconstitutional. The Supreme Court, the judicial branch, is not about putting people in jail. They're not about criminal. They're about constitutionality of laws. They are supposed to be evaluating and enforcing the Constitution. That ain't happening. They're forcing and enforcing their progressive liberal agenda crap, and they're supporting their liberal president and the liberals in Congress and the House, and they're manipulating the system, and we have these lifelong appointments to where you can't change anybody, and people won't retire until they have somebody in a president that's going to appoint somebody like them. So the system is being manipulated, and there's being no checks and balances on the manipulation. When the system started, it was more equal. It's not equal now. I absolutely think the president has the absolute power because he's in charge of the executive branch, which gives him in charge of all the military and all the cops. You can't get more power than that over the people. You can't get the more ability to abuse that power than the executive branch. Not only is the executive branch supposed to be wheeled in by the judicial branch, the Chief Justice, all the justices on the Supreme Court are supposed to be reeling him in on constitutional issues. The Congress is supposed to be reeling in. Congress has the ability to impeach him. And impeachment comes from the House. The House has to say, hey, you're not doing what we want you to do. We are the representative of the people. We're in the people's house, and we're going to hold you accountable. And if you don't hold accountable, then we're going to impeach you. And then it goes to the other people's side of the House to where it has a Senate where every state has 2 representatives, and they get to vote on whether to affirm or agree with the impeachment. Now, what's happening is, because of all this political crap and because of all this reach across the aisle crap and we should all get along and we shouldn't be fighting and everybody mistrusts government because the Republicans are being obstructionists, that's all horsepucky. People need to realize that the founders wanted government to be restricted. They wanted it hard to get government involved. There's like, I don't know, I want to say 9,000 bills introduced, and only maybe 500 a year are approved. Those 500 bills a year add up over each year. That's a lot of freaking laws. That's too many already. And people are like confusing, these checks and balances as Republicans are being obstructionists. Democrats are obstructionists. Nobody has a problem with that. I don't have a problem with either one of them being obstruction. I think unless the people and all the people's representatives can agree on something, then government ought to stay the hell out of it. If it's important enough to get the government involved, then all the government pretty much ought to agree with it. So another balance of power is when the House passes a law and the Senate approves it, sends it up to the president to sign, the president can veto it. And he can say, screw you. And I think one of the biggest veto guys around was when the Dems were vetoing on Bush was vetoing, and when it went back for the 3/4 vote, they only were overturned one of his vetoes. So Bush was a veto on a lot of laws, which I got no problem with vetoing laws. The less laws we have, the less government control we have, the better it is. Government is never the fix. It's always the cause of the problem, to get more money and to tell people we can fix the problems that we caused. But they leave out the part that we caused. Because most of the problems that people are complaining about, the deficit, the illegals, the injustice, it's all caused by government. Now, this executive order crap that the executive, I want you to remember the executive branch, who we are. This problem with the executive branch causing all these problems with now he has, I'm writing executive orders. The president was never allowed to write laws. Never designed, never intended. The president was a figurehead. He was in charge of the executive branch. The president's cabinet, the executive branch, his cabinet used to be 4 people, I think, when it started. Department of War, Secretary of State, and a couple others. But there was only 4 people in the president's cabinet. Now the president, there was 4 secretaries. Secretary of War, Secretary of State, whatever. Now there's all kind of Secretary of Health and Human Resources, which is welfare. We got a whole freaking secretary now of we started off with a Secretary of War, and now we have a Secretary of Welfare. I mean, if that's not a clue that where our country has gone from good to shit. I mean, you have Secretary of Urban Development. Oh, well, well, shit, Rick. We have almost 11% of the people that are urban problems. Urban is code word for black, in case people didn't know that. So we only have 11%, but we need a secretary for that. Urban development, housing development, education. I've got a secretary of education. I got a secretary of this, secretary of Homeland Security. The cabinet has grown so huge. Guess who the cabinet works for? All these secretaries. Who do they work for? Executive branch. Executive branch has too much power. And people don't realize that Congress, when you elect these people who are not willing to stand up to the executive branch on the guise of getting along, singing kumbaya and hugging, reaching across the aisle, making government move smoothly, all these code words for not doing your freaking job and holding in the executive branch in check and making him apply with the Constitution and holding these other branches. The president used to run more times. They passed, I want to say it was an amendment, I'm not sure how they, but the president's term's 2 terms, and I thought it came from a minute, but I could be wrong. He can only run 2 terms, and he's got to get out. That's a good move. You know what? The other branches, the Senate, they're elected for 6 years. They ought to be held to 2 terms. That's longer than the president. And then the House, every 2 years, then they ought to, or vice versa, I'm not sure. I'm not thinking on which one. One's 2 years, one's 6 years, I think. But there ought to be term limits. Nobody ought to be in government for more than 6 to 8, 10 years, period. It ought to be in. That's it. That's it. You're gone. You got to go out and live and work and survive in the environment that you're creating. Because when we give these politicians this authority, the president can be elected. First of all, he gets his Senate retirement, which he can keep. And he gets that for being a senator for 6 years. He gets a lifelong retirement. Now he becomes president for 2 years, and he gets another retirement. Plus he gets armed protection, armed Secret Service protection for the rest of his life. And people don't realize that armed Secret Service protection is not just a couple guys to guard him. This is a whole convoy. They usually build a house at government expense next to where the president lives, and they have a whole group of guys working 24 hours a day to provide yard security, room security, transportation security, a driver, when he goes shopping, when his family goes. They get to live in this great protected environment by the executive branch, and then they want to say we need gun control because we don't want citizens having guns. We don't want anybody else having guns, but we're going to have guns. When gun control comes out, and this is a big thing where, right now they're hitting this gun control issue, and I'm telling you people, go buy a stinking gun. I don't care if you don't like me. I don't care if you're a liberal. I don't care if you think I'm full of shit. Go buy a gun to piss me off. I don't care what the reason is. But the government needs to know that there is a lot of armed citizens out there. Because I'm telling you, that is the only thing that holds the executive branch in check, is that we have an armed citizen. If you look at the recent the Bundy incident on the border, armed citizens went there. ATF or BLM backed down. If you look at Ruby Ridge, where they didn't back down, they killed a bunch of people. Some people are going to say, oh, they deserved it, they were, whatever. When government has control and ability to only one with the guns, citizens always pay. It's never a good thing. I don't care, and you never take away the guns from the bad guys. Our rights to defend ourselves is paramount in the Constitution. That's why it was the Second Amendment. The first was free speech, and the second was right after it, because without the second, all the other ones don't matter. Nothing matters once they get the guns. And all this crap talk about hunting, okay, I've got guns. I don't hunt. I don't kill anything except stupid humans that do stuff that deserve to be killed. Okay? The only thing I hunt is maybe the government when they're out there doing their stupid shit. I don't hunt animals. So the Second Amendment has nothing to, people go, oh, you're a cop and you're a gun and you're a big hunter. I'm not a hunter. I don't go out and shoot things. So I believe in the Second Amendment. I think people need guns to protect themselves from government. That's what the Constitution said. That's why it was designed. That's how it was meant. It had nothing to do with hunting. It had to do with keeping the government in check and national security of our country. Nobody wants to invade a country when all the citizens are armed, because you're not just fighting the few people that are forced into the military. You're fighting every house in every country, in every county, in every city, because everybody has guns. Nobody's going to take over this country as long as our citizens are armed. Movie Red Dawn, good little movie, made some good lessons about how to fight when a government comes in and takes over. Because I always tell people, if we don't control our government, another government will move in and they will control them. Just like the Japanese didn't control their government, and when they bombed us, our government moved in and nuked the shit out of their country. Did we nuke the politicians? No. Did we nuke the people with guns and that had the executive branch? No. You know who got nuked? The poor dumb citizens working their butts off, paying taxes, had no clue, probably didn't even vote for the guy or have input on why they bombed us, and all the women and children were killed. Because that's how war works. They don't attack the people who are causing the war, they attack the people who are allowing the people to run the country that caused the war. Big lesson in history, people. The executive branch is out of control, and our Congress is not holding them in check, and our crooked left-wing judicial branch is not holding the executive branch in check. And as an executive branch member for my entire adult life, I was either in the military or a cop. As an executive branch member, I can tell you, power corrupts absolutely. It is undeniable when people are not held accountable. When people have power, you tend to abuse and take advantage of that power. It is just human nature. You can make it about bad, you can say it's the cops, you can say it's the liberals, the Republican, you can blame it on anybody you want. Human nature is power corrupts absolutely. Better get our executive branch in check. I'm telling you, these executive orders and our executive branch is way out of control. And he's growing every day. They're arming meat inspectors, they're arming, you name it, every branch of the federal government now has armed police officers who all fall under and must follow orders of the Chief Executive Officer of the United States, and that is the President, the one in charge of the executive branch. All right, hope that helps.